as a retailer, you are in charge of essentially setting the trend with not only your assortment, but with your customer service and the experience that you're offering. So being a retailer, being a consumption lounge business, you have a lot of power to set trends in cannabis.
Hey guys, welcome to Wine, Whiskey and Weed Show. This is your host, Sid Patel. I have Maha Haq with me. Please, I'm sorry, but I'll have you also pronounce your name. So I have Maha Haq with me. She takes care of, the cannabis retail and lounges at Green Thumb Industries, which is one of the leading players in cannabis in America. And really her job is to, kick off new dispensaries, lounges, and also help them with product assortment, try to have a theme to each dispensary and so on. So I think we're going to have lots to learn, especially for dispensary owners who are trying to open up multi-state facilities or even their first one. I really want to go there so they can learn from an experienced professional like you, Maha. So thank you very much. Why don't you give our audience a little bit of, context about your journey into cannabis and what exactly do you do there?
Oh, for sure. So this is my 10th year working in the legal cannabis space.
Wow.
So I started as soon as I could start working at dispensaries. So my first job, I was a bud tender, worked my way up the management ladder, got to be a general manager for a couple dispensaries at a very young age. I worked at vertically integrated shops, so I was exposed to different aspects of the supply chain. So I was exposed a little bit to cultivation and distribution from time to time, as well as delivery. But then, the only sector of cannabis that I hadn't really touched was the analytical cannabis testing side. So that was my job before the pandemic happened. I was working at a testing lab and understanding that part of the supply chain. And while that was going on, consumption lounges started to become a new reality for a lot of cannabis businesses. So I shifted my focus to that and primarily more from a business development and license application perspective. So I worked at a Denver-based consulting firm where I got that exposure, the business development and licensing exposure. But yeah, after experiencing the supply chain, started my own consultancy called Hospitality, where we worked and focused on consumption lounges and sometimes retail projects. And now I'm with GTI. All while doing this, I had my cannabis nonprofit as well called Canna Club. It's a cannabis student organization at 26 universities. So that also helped when it came to resources and just linking.
What does that do? What purpose is that solving?
So 3 pillars for Canna Club is education, advocacy, and opportunity. So that final pillar of opportunity is we link our students to awesome jobs in the cannabis industry and vice versa. We're connecting cannabis companies with top talent from these top tier universities. We also help with sourcing volunteers for cannabis events and collaborating with brands on educational and community-based initiatives. So, every cannabis business has to fulfill some type of community benefits plan per whatever city they're in, per their license requirements. So Canna Club helps with that. So we do a lot of educational initiatives and community initiatives together. So I always try to tie that in with my work. I always try to make it known that this is a resource for both ends. So it also benefits the students, it benefits the cannabis companies. So I definitely leverage Canna Club quite a bit, although I'm not a student anymore. It's definitely a perk for whatever company I'm tied with.
Great. I mean, I can see a lot of entrepreneur DNA there. You just threw in 3 or 4 things that you're doing. So I believe right now it's full-time job at Green Thumb still, right?
Yeah.
Got it. So what's the role exactly there? Like if there was a KPI, and if your boss, let's say, had to measure you on your performance, what is that?
So we do have a scoring and tracking system that we have for all of our operators or all of our operating teams. So, it's hard to measure what I do. I do a lot of big picture planning and strategic initiatives. So although I'm not there day to day, I'm not on the floor.
So give us some
day-to-day.
examples on what do you mean strategic initiatives? Let's say.
So expansion efforts, tracking new and emerging markets, checking out what real estate would be perfect for a specific area. So, looking at fast food, formerly fast food buildings are very interesting to look at for a dispensary. Also with lounges, figuring out different business models and revenue streams, for the lounge offerings. So let's say we have, a variety of different devices. Are we going to utilize them as rentals? Are we going to have a try before you buy program? So there's a lot of different, plugging and playing and trying out different options happening in my world. But yeah, I'm not on the floor day to day, but I am doing a lot of big picture plans and projects.
Understood. Great. Let's define, dispensary and lounge. Someone like, especially, I'm a good example, is, still trying to understand cannabis industry. What can a dispensary do and what can a lounge do? If you had to please explain me.
So a dispensary can dispense cannabis. So you sell cannabis legally at a cannabis shop. So it's quite literally a retail experience. It's a retailer. It's a cannabis retailer. So all you're doing there is you're shopping for weed, you're buying it, and you're getting out. Consumption lounges a consumption lounge is a area where you can consume essentially in that designated area. So you cannot smoke anywhere else, but just in that specific zone. So,
and are there limits?
So this is going to be varying from city to city, state to state. So, for example, Nevada, they want to push single serve products. And although that might serve as a challenge for a lot of manufacturers because they have to repackage everything, they have to create an entirely new SKU for that particular single serving product, there's pushback already. So that single serve aspect might be obsolete, but it's still in the process. People are going back and forth with the local governing authority in Nevada and pushing for not trying to do single serve, but there's that initial ordinance that was proposed to have single serve products. But in California, you can purchase as much as you can at a retailer. So you have certain limits. You can get up to an ounce of flower in some cities, but you can get up to 2 ounces in other cities. So it really depends on your particular jurisdiction, how much they allow in retail, because that will translate over to how much they allow at the lounge.
Understood.
So the limit doesn't change, but there are proposals for putting those limits at lounges.
So it's like, obviously it's like on-premise and off-premise, how we have it in the drinks industry, right? Like you have bars and restaurants where you can consume there, and then you have the bottle shops where you have to not consume there, but you can purchase and take home, right? But here I can understand that we can have like 10 beers and nothing's going to happen. But in the lounge, I mean, after 2 joints or maybe 1 joint, how is it a good business? I mean, if someone's just going to come and have 1 joint and then go home.
So this is where the additional business models come into play, or service models rather. So you know how you go to a club, some clubs, they have bottle service. There's bong service. There's rental fees for certain devices. So there's a very popular device called a student glass. It's kind of like a gravity bong. And it's also even used for infusing coal smoke into food. So it has a multi-purpose, but at the lounges, it's used kind of like a gravity bong hookah setup, and that has a high price tag to rent, because that piece itself costs around $600 to $700. If you want to use it as a rental, it would be upwards of $60 to $100 for an hour. So that is a way to, I guess, deal with those who are not going to have a higher average transaction. So that's the rentals are going to be, I guess, the crux of some of what some lounges are going to be making. So not every lounge will be following that model. The one lounge that GTI has, it's called Rise Lounge in the suburbs of Chicago. And they don't have a rental fee or rental program. They have a try before you buy program, which I see as a little more approachable for a lot of our patrons. They're happy to know that they don't have to pay for a rental, but they do know they have an option to buy it from that place directly. So that buying the devices directly from the lounge helps generate revenue for the lounge as opposed to buying it at the retail arm.
Got it.
So
they can sell as well. Like they can actually sell
devices,
packaged stuff, cannabis as well.
Yeah. So just like a retailer, you can sell the products. You can also sell paraphernalia and, any other ancillary items that are often at a dispensary.
Understood.
Yeah.
So I think back on, starting a new dispensary, right? I guess location, as you said, some of the findings you have made is a fast food joint, like an ex-McDonald's site or something like that. What are some tips that you would give in if someone wants to start a new dispensary, on location to budgeting or whatever it is? Let's say I come to you as a friend. Hey, I'm thinking of starting a new dispensary. What are the 10 questions you would ask me immediately?
Oh man, 10. But the first thing I would check is, like, of course, look into the area. And if there is a license application process there, because you'd be surprised, there's not a lot of cities that do approve retail businesses, at least in California and of course in other states as well. So definitely look into the local city website to see if there is an application process for that. And if there is, that's awesome. Then I would recommend looking at the competition. What's around that area? Is there are there any other dispensaries that are already up and running? I would recommend visiting them, checking out their assortment, going on Weed Maps, check out the map, see where you're trying to open yours and see the surrounding places, see their menus. And that's a huge thing that I get to do, is scope out Weed Maps, see where they are on the map and see their menu. Like that is a great first step to a competitive analysis. So like I would start off with that. And there's like a slew of things. So of course with property, and then of course with investment, got to make sure you got enough investment. So let's just say hypothetically, you've got everything. You got all your money. You can totally do your license.
Just for the fun fact, if it's a 4,000 square feet facility that you have to sort of make, right? Like obviously it depends on deco here and there. How much investment is needed, with inventory?
Oh man. So like at least out here in California, like got to do 1 to 2 million to start up a shop here, especially with
let's say
$2 million,
right?
Yeah.
So now how much they take I can tell you the numbers in bottle shop, right? By my experience. So let's say in cannabis, if it's a $2 million investment, does it have a potential to do 1 million usually in sales?
Yes. So like especially as we're focusing on like California or even SoCal, the startup cost would be around 1 to 2 million. Okay. You should be projecting at least like 5 to 8 million is the range. Wow. At least for
every year for sales.
Yes. So like but that is
and
gross.
Last question is what's the net usually?
Yeah. So that is gross, but net would be, so you have to pay a lot in taxes. Don't expect too much. Almost all of it can go away in net, depending on how much you owe, what are your taxes in your particular city. But around net would be like 2 to 4 range if we were looking at 5 to 8. So basically half is what it would go. So overhead costs, you got to expect like you got to make sure that you are incorporating your overhead, your inventory. Inventory costs a lot too, but a lot of brands do have like a net 30 option. But you'd be surprised, not a lot of dispensaries were able to pay the brands, so they're really on a 365 net at this point. Or net 365 at this point, but after incorporating all those costs, you're making around like between like 2 to 4 net. So gross 5 to 8, net 2 to 4, or 2 to 4.
40% like net margins.
So yeah, like especially nowadays, like it's rough right now to like have a shop. It is
But that's good. I'm
not a
saying
good.
40% is good, isn't it? You're talking about 2
Yeah.
million, right? Taking home on a 5 million sales.
Yeah, if it's going strong, yes.
Yeah, yeah.
So if
Okay.
it's a strong performing shop, yes. But like,
So, sorry, go ahead.
using actual examples, like, some shops were barely bringing in 1 million net. So like, depends on where you're located, depends what your assortment's like, depends on your overhead. But if it's a good shop doing well, you should be at least bringing in like 40%. Yeah.
Understood. So basically, if your dispensary is doing 40%, it's a good dispensary. Pretty much, it's a good business, right? If a buyer was looking for to buy, those kind of dispensaries are good businesses.
Yeah.
What about the laws? In alcohol, sometimes there are laws like, okay, there is a mile radius, there's just one dispensary, or 1,000 people, there's just one liquor store, right? Are there any laws protecting the licenses?
So some cities, and I'll give an example. One of GTI's dispensaries is Essence in Pasadena, which is in Northeast LA. There are laws, or there were laws that would say if you're going to open a dispensary, you have to be 500 feet away from another dispensary that's open. So there was a lot of pushback on that from competitors. They were like, oh, this reduces our chances of securing property because the city itself limited the green zone, or the places or the locations permissible for cannabis business, to like a block. So you don't have many options. There's not many available properties in that block. So a lot of the competitors for for Essence dispensary, they wanted to open less than 500 feet away because those were really the only properties available. So there was some lobbying done. There was some changes. So they reduced the 500 feet to 450 feet. So if there
because
is
one guy wanted to open within 450.
Exactly. So if there's something set in stone, there is a way to, push back with the city if you'd like. But yes, there's other zoning limitations. Like you can't be within a certain amount of 100 feet or even 1,000 feet from a school or from a child service type of business. So that could be like a dancing studio, that could be a daycare. And yeah, so you have to, I guess, follow those zoning laws, or else you won't be compliant. But when it comes to being closer to other dispensaries, yes, there is a way to come. There are ways that dispensary businesses are protected from another dispensary opening up right next to them. But yeah, this particular case in Pasadena, the city caved in. Now they reduced it to 450 feet. That competing dispensary is now 451 feet away from Essence.
100%. I got it.
Yeah.
I think on dispensary layout, I believe you must be also part of the whole design and everything, right? Like how the
inventory space is so important.
Yeah. So I want to
It's
ask you, why is it like really so much space is wasted in, okay, there is a security guy, then there's another door, there is just a reception, someone checking your ID and all that, and then just a few. I don't know, like why it's like a jewelry shop or something, or an Apple store instead of like a bottle shop or liquor store or 7-Eleven. What's the theory behind this kind of designs?
So some dispensaries are changing their layouts to encourage more of that retail shopping experience. There's actually High Times just opened a dispensary in San Bernardino, and they have shopping baskets, like red ones, very similar to CVS, and they have a very grocery store, convenience store style layout. So there are some retailers.
So it's not the legal thing. It's not like you're forced to put everything behind the lock.
So now you don't have to, but you have to have a check-in area. So depending on how you place your check-in area, where you have to give your ID and get it scanned and make sure you're 21 plus, you do have to have a designated check-in area. But the way some retailers are doing it is to fit in that customer journey, the traditional customer journey, the traditional customer flow at just these other traditional retailers. So there are dispensaries taking that initiative. You don't have to have like the whole glass situation in some cities now. However, in medical states or medical only markets, you do have to maintain that layout. But in adult use and recreational dispensaries, in rec states, you don't have to really follow that much of restriction of having or separation anymore. But you have to have a security guard. You have to have a designated area for check-in. And but yeah, other than that, you can
What
follow.
about storage spaces, right? Like normally for
Yeah.
liquor stores, there is so much beers,
Inventory
which
space is so important. That's the first thing I
so
say. If
is
you
it like,
can't,
till what I'm understanding that for cannabis, it's very less. Is it? I think, I don't know, because it's just
no
so high
way.
value.
No, I think so. Inventory space is like probably like I've seen it be overlooked by some retailers.
Just
And
what, 30% of the store it takes?
I wouldn't say 30%. I would like so I if you have at least over like 500 square feet dedicated to your inventory space, then you're good. But if you have less than that, it's going to be very difficult for you, depending on how much volume you also want to sell. If you have a small shop, you don't have much to worry about. But if you're trying to push volume, if you're trying to have average transactions to what most dispensaries around are doing, then at least 500 square feet is what I would recommend. Also, you have to take into mind fridges or refrigerators, cooling units for beverages, and concentrate products. There's a lot of concentrate products on the market that require refrigeration. So need to make sure there's space for that. But I've been at dispensaries that had a very small retail space, and it is very inefficient for operations. If you have a small space, you're ordering more frequently, or you're ordering less amounts, but you're ordering more frequently, and that can really bog down inventory intake and just general tracking of your inventory. And just it takes an entire night after business hours to make sure everything is up to date, everything is all inputted into the system, because these are all metric tagged too. So upon receiving your product, the dispensary or the inventory personnel at the dispensary has to do like a whole slew of processes beyond just stocking it on the shelf. So making sure you have an ample of space in your inventory, making sure you're not doing as many frequent orders, and your orders are able to fulfill your consumer base is very important. So I always recommend a nice storage inventory storage area.
What are some good flows you've seen, where it actually has increased sales, footfalls, flow, and upsales and cross sales?
So a lot of brands are pushing for like little brand activations in within stores. So like there's a lot of shelving space that they can kind of take over, put their branding on there, and that really is more beneficial for the brand and of course the retailer, because they're pushing those products. But the actual customer journey and processes that I've seen, I guess, increasing sales would be having multiple options for ordering. So there could be a kiosk, there could be a pickup service, there could be a what is it called? I'm losing my train of thought.
But tender standing there.
Well, that too, but you can have a kiosk style, or you can do it directly from an iPad from your bud tender. So you don't even have to talk to the bud tender, or you can talk to the bud tender. So like you can really save time by just having these automated ordering systems. So adding automation to your ordering and your pickup is going to really increase sales. That's what I've noticed. Automating ordering, automating pickup.
And the flow, you've noticed some placements where you think, this kind of category, if I just put it, right at the door, it works better. And then some categories.
So organizing categories is super important. That is something I'm seeing some dispensaries are maintaining, but some are going away from that route. So traditionally, dispensaries always had specific categories with separated from other categories. So now some dispensaries are merging the two. I'm not a big fan of that. Having a flow where you have your flower here, your concentrates here, your edibles here, I think is perfect. I think from the get-go, the person at the front desk or whoever is greeting you should tell you where everything is, as opposed to them just kind of shopping around and seeing trying to find where everything is. if you just tell them from the get-go, as soon as they enter, our flowers here, our concentrates here are our beverages, here are our edibles, that really expedites the process. And there's not a lot of customers asking questions on the floor, like, oh, where can I see this? Or where can I find this? You're going to keep the questions at a minimum.
Got it. This may be like a silly question, but can't dispensaries sell any other stuff like cheese or water or snacks or anything?
So some cities do allow that. You can have water bottles or juices, but not every city is okay with that. There's one particular dispensary out here where in the valley, I live very close to it. They have like a small mini fridge with just regular drinks, not non-alcoholic, but just like, juices, like milkshake type drinks, but not every city allows that. But it is nice to see that.
Got it. What about, do you also train people? I believe that would be also part of your thing where you're, it's a new dispensary. You have to sort of empower new staff with the new systems or inventory or whatever it is, right? Yeah. Like, what are those kind of things which, usually you would want when it's new, you have to cover all these modules with the staff?
Yeah. So with personnel training, a lot goes into it. So of course we start with the basics. We do very we start easy, Cannabis 101. We go through all the different types of products and methods of ingestion and common questions that patients or customers will ask. Then we distinguish the differences between customer service and patient care. And then on the operations side, we, of course, go through how the POS works. There's a lot that goes into POS, especially with cannabis, how to make sure you're checking in someone properly, how someone's being checked out properly, making sure making sure all the taxes are showing up on your transaction screen. So those are some of the elements of the POS training, the operations and POS training. And of course, with inventory intake, that is for the back of house staff. Then for the front of house is more service-based and hospitality standard-based. So there is a difference between front of house and back of house training. But I have recently been encouraging both front of house and back of house to be trained on both sides, just in case someone had to fill in for the other. So, but yes, service, hospitality, ops, POS, inventory intake.
Super. I think one last one here for, what you've observed, during everything on an operator, right? How much it boils down to, the GM operating a dispensary and then someone else is operating B dispensary. So where do you see that? Okay, wow, this is a pure example of a good manager running a dispensary. And it's like gone because of a bad executor. So give us some bad examples and some good examples, please.
Yeah. So I do think a GM can make or break a shop. So like regardless of a dispensary having all the backing it needs from leadership, I still think a GM is a reflection of the dispensary. And if if there's a dispensary not making sales, then the GM isn't pushing hard enough. He's not, or he or she is not motivating their staff to make more sales. They're not communicating with the marketing or administrative team enough to push out more advertisement or promotions for the dispensary. So if a dispensary that isn't doing well, so dispensary B, that one isn't doing well, they're probably not communicating with the other administrative people that are there to help boost up the store, and they're not motivating their staff enough. So low sales, I think, is something that is the responsibility of the GM that they need to take control of. So dispensary A, a good example would be the GM is very hands-on. They themselves are on the floor from time to time, making sure that they are supportive, especially during rush hours. They are empowering their staff enough to the point where they're educated, they're knowledgeable on all the products on the floor, they're able to push it, and there's solid communication on products that need to get out, or need to be sold off immediately, just because there might be another order coming in, or it's probably, getting towards the not the end of the shelf life, but to the point where we need to refresh the shelves. So like I would see a benefit to a store if they keep having fresh product. If a dispensary doesn't have fresh product, then something's wrong with not the staff, but with whoever is leading the staff and not making sure those products are going out. So Dispensary A will have fresh product, rotating assortment, new stuff or new drops, new products, very good floor staff that knows how to sell product and can explain why they should sell the product to you. Because remember, these staff or the personnel and the staff, they're not representing the brand. So they could care less on pushing out a particular product. But then that in turn, goes to the other staff members who are in charge of buying. So the buyers have to make sure that they know their customer base, talking with the GM, communicating about what's doing well, what's not. So if there's a GM, they're not communicating with marketing or buying or the buying teams or their own staff on the floor, then you're going to see a decrease in sales. But if they're doing all of the above, then of course sales are going to be increasing. So but what's interesting is a lot of the staff depend on the GM to incentivize what they're doing too. So I think a GM who incentivizes their staff makes sure they're able to try the product. So a lot of brands do give samples, but if the GM is making sure the samples are getting into the sales or not the sales, but the floor staff's hands, they're able to try it, give feedback on it, and they'll be able to sell it. So I think, shop is indeed a reflection of the GM or whoever is running it.
Got it. Where can people learn about, I'm sure you've mastered your art, but I think it looks like it's mainly from the practical experience. But is there a place where people can learn about dispensary design or even workflows, or just for a GM, let's say, is trying to improve their skill? Are there any resources that you can recommend?
Oh, some resources. Oh man. So I actually found a really good resource on FlowHub. They have templates for SOPs for retailers. So there's so I like to refer to that a lot. It kind of goes through different processes for day-to-day and for day-to-day dispensary operations. There's cash handling and management, there's inventory, procurement and management. There's also checking in and checking out processes on there. There's also some COVID protocols on there as well. So this is like FlowHub is a POS, although I don't use them, and I would recommend other POS, but I do recommend the resources that FlowHub has.
Any books do you read, which are like business books in cannabis?
There is one book. I'm forgetting what it's called, but it is about cannabis retail. Oh man, I should have prepared for that.
No,
there's one book. There's one book, and actually
the name
gave it
comes
to
in,
my
just
friend.
email me and I'll add it in the comments.
Yes, there's one book, and so my business partner Sarah Stewart, she comes from the hospitality side. I come from cannabis. She gave me a book called Setting the Table, and I gave her a book which was about all about cannabis dispensaries and retail. So I'm gonna let you know what book that is because I don't have it anymore.
Sounds good. Any closing remarks you have for people? Anything you want to say?
Oh man, I think like as a retailer, you are in charge of essentially setting the trend with not only your assortment, but with your customer service and the experience that you're offering. So being a retailer, being a consumption lounge business, you have a lot of power to set trends in cannabis.
Super. Thanks for the shout out to all the retailers out there. Let's grow the consumers in categories, and I think that's where it is.
And if people want to follow me, I'm Hi Maha on Instagram, and I'm on LinkedIn as well. So always open to chatting and comparing notes and improving our processes.